David Osborne is a senior fellow for labor policy at the Commonwealth Foundation. It's a free market think tank based in Pennsylvania. They've done a lot of important work on this. I got early warnings about this pick, Lori Chavez-DeRemer, who I'm sure is a nice person. I'm not trying to attack her personally. But some of my friends at Americans for Prosperity were like, dude, you got to see what this woman's been up to, what her agenda is, what her record is on labor issues, which is her portfolio if she gets this position. And they directed me to a lot of the work of the Commonwealth Foundation, and David Osborne has done a lot of that work. He wrote a really good piece at Reason about this. David, it's good to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Guy.
All right, so I'm trying not to sound too hysterical here, but when I was reading some of the things that this individual has supported, not just with an offhanded comment, things that she has co-sponsored, things that she has taken the lead on in terms of legislation, it's almost hard to characterize how bad and damaging some of her positions are. And it's not ancient history, it's recent history. Let's talk about the PRO Act, for example. Tell us about the PRO Act.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. She supported the PRO Act is basically like the Green New Deal for unions. It's got everything in there that unions have ever wanted. And this is on the private sector side. So you talked about the private sector being different from the public. Absolutely true. We can talk about that in a second.
Yep.
But with private sector unions, at the very least, you should have a level playing field, one that's fair for corporations and one that's fair for unions and union members. People should have a choice as to whether or not they join a union. They should have a fair election. The employer shouldn't be allowed to meddle with those elections. But what the PRO Act does is basically turn the tables on the employers and makes the unions far more strong. They can run a union campaign basically with anyone they want, including independent contractors. They can get people to sign cards instead of having an election. They can bypass that altogether. They can take their corporation to court when they don't allow them to engage in what they call secondary boycotts, which are like strikes, but against everyone. It's a really strange bill that, honestly, I don't know that it's ever going to pass as it is. But what the NLRB under Biden has tried to do is basically implement a bunch of the pieces of the PRO Act administratively, and of course they've been pretty successful with that until Trump was elected.
Yeah, so this is a huge Biden priority to get these types of things done because it's a Christmas tree to organized labor, which they see as a big, giant political gift for Democrats. But Lori Chavez-DeRemer was all for the PRO Act. Yes, she was a co-sponsor of this bill?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, until recently. She has disclaimed her interest in that. She has very recently, probably in support of her nomination, she said that it was unworkable. I think that's true. I hope that she's seen the light. But unfortunately, she hasn't come to that same conclusion with a far worse bill.
Yeah, so I want to get to this. And by the way, we will revisit whether these changes of hearts are credible or not. And I don't want people to see this as, again, some sort of me, assailing her or ripping Trump. I just don't see a lot of even grassroots people coming to bat for this woman because it was kind of an out-of-left-field pick in a number of ways. She doesn't have the constituency or following that a lot of these other more controversial picks that have gotten through have. And her ideas in this area, in the realm where she would be the secretary, are so odious, in my view, on a policy level that if you're going to tank one of these nominees over their beliefs, and she can say, well, I don't believe them anymore. She believed them up until 4 seconds ago is part of the issue here. The PRO Act is one thing. It's at least in the private sector. Tell us about the public sector bill in terms of unions that she not only has supported, she was like the leading champion of this monstrosity.
That's right. And, she's boasted about her father being a Teamster. I mean, this is not this is part of her identity.
And that's fine.
And
that's fine. I just don't want that person running the labor department.
That's right. Well, on the public sector side, so this is far worse. When we talk about public sector unions, we're talking about teachers' unions. We're talking about unions that represent state workers and even federal workers.
Well, the people who are out there holding these insane anti-Doge rallies.
That's right.
Right? The people who locked kids out of schools, especially in blue states, some like the Randy Weingartens of the world, the federal bureaucrat unions, this is who we're talking about.
That's right. And they, of course, are different because they're sitting across the bargaining table from the very people who get elected. So when they're involved in political campaigns, they're doing it to elect their next boss.
Right, because they're negotiating against taxpayers. They negotiate against us because we're the ones who pay them, and they use our money indirectly, but we pay them their salaries, and then they put a ton of money by force into their political operation to get Democrats elected, to force us to pay them more. That is, I mean, I think it should be illegal. I actually agree with Franklin Delano Roosevelt that in almost all cases, public sector government unions should not be allowed to exist, but they do, right? That's a battle for another day. What does this bill that Lori Chavez-DeRemer, Trump's pick for labor secretary, what does the bill include? What does it entail that she supports?
Here's what bothers Democrats. Public sector unions are governed by state policy. And so the only way that congressional Democrats are going to be able to tell states what to do is if they engage in a hostile takeover of state law when it comes to public sector unions. So what this bill does is basically set federal standards and says that each state has to meet those standards. Now, those standards are higher than any state has right now. And when I say higher, I mean more pro-union than any state has right now. They
including like California and Illinois?
Including California, Illinois, Hawaii, some of the worst out there. And then it says that if the state doesn't meet those standards, then the federal government is going to take over their administration of the new laws that the government is implementing and is going to oversee unionization of state and local government work sectors. They're also going to administer prohibited acts or unfair labor practice charges, all the kinds of things that come up during a union dispute. And the federal government is going to fly in and get involved in every single one of these states. Now, the department that would oversee all this is something called the Federal Labor Relations Authority. I was a Trump appointee underneath the Federal Labor Relations Authority. Right now it has something like 113 employees. There's no way this can happen without a huge growth in the federal government. And what they would do is basically put their thumb on the scale of unions to make it easier to unionize, not only in states like the ones that you mentioned, but in states like Arkansas, North Carolina, South Carolina, states that have actually made, Utah just did it a couple weeks ago, had made unionization in the public sector illegal. Well, this would change all of that, flip it all on its head, and put unions basically everywhere, every local government, state government.
So it's basically saying it's like they see the status quo in California and Illinois, and they say, that's not good enough. We need to go further left, more pro-union than that, and that has to be the top-down blanket national approach that all 50 states must adhere to. And if not, then the federal government is going to come in and take everything. It's like the Randy Weingarten alliance. He's going to come in and take over all 50 states. And this is the bill that Lori Chavez-DeRemer, it's her bill.
Yeah.
This is what she has carried the torch for this bill. It is one of the worst things I can conceive of in the labor space. And you can say, well, maybe she, is wrong on this, and that was like a foible that she had as a Republican congresswoman, and, she's got some family background, and, hopefully it never becomes law. She's now Trump's pick to run the Labor Department. So, to me, it should be disqualifying. It's like whatever the conservative consensus position, from old school conservative to new Trump conservative, whatever the consensus position would be, Lori Chavez-DeRemer's crazy Make America Even More Left-Wing Than Illinois or California bill is the opposite of it. So if she was, the person out there beating the drums for that, I'm extremely worried about her priorities, her judgment, her ideology in this space, and this is the space where she would be queen. She'd be the labor secretary. What her defenders will now say, and what Republicans who might vote for her will say is, well, she is now assuring us that she doesn't believe these things anymore. I mean, I get it. RFK said, oh, yeah, ignore everything I've said on these 7 topics because now I'm serving Donald Trump and I will support his agenda. And that was good enough for some people. I guess the final question I have for you here is, David, if she says, forget about the legislation I just co-sponsored up until a few seconds ago, forget everything that I've tried to make law, I won't do any of that. I'm born again. I'm now going to do whatever Trump wants. Never mind my entire record. Is that credible? And are we to believe that someone with these views would not do some really serious damage with the power she might get?
Yeah, no, here's the problem. I mean, these bills are a symptom of a bigger disease, and she unfortunately happens to have the disease. The real problem here, and what makes her so out of step with what Trump has done in other areas, is that she doesn't respect federalism. A bill like this, it comes in and invades states' prerogatives, and it's completely unlike everything that Trump has suggested when it comes to education and even abortion. I mean, this is just radically different. If it's not this, it's going to be something else. And if we can't elect people and then have them appoint people who respect federalism, we're doomed.
Yeah, it's a real issue. And as you pointed out, David, you were a Trump in the last term, you were a Trump appointee in a labor board. So it's not like you're sitting here coming to attack Donald Trump. I just wanted this audience to be aware of this woman's record, and I think she should be grilled. Her hearing is tomorrow, correct? So I really hope that the Republicans are going to do their due diligence, and we'll see. I've heard that this one might be in jeopardy, but there could be Democratic votes coming to support her. If Republicans fall off, Democrats might love what they see in Lori Chavez-DeRemer in this space. So I wanted to inform our audience on the substance and the record here and see how things play out tomorrow. David Osborne of the Commonwealth Foundation sort of raising the alarm on these issues. David, we really appreciate your expertise.